In this video, we're going to look at the synthesis of aspirin from salicylic acid and acetic anhydride. We've set up the experiment such that the salicylic acid will be the limiting reagent and the acetic anhydride will be in excess. And then I measured out 3.1 grams of the salicylic acid. I was aiming for about 3 grams. So one of the things that you will need is a boiling water bath. And so I've put some boiling stones into my 600 ml beaker, which had about 400 mils of water. I've turned on the hot plate and I brought the temperature up right now close to 90 degrees Celsius. So this is about ready to boil, and therefore I'm about ready for my next step. Now some of the other things that I have set up here is my retort stand, and I have a clamp, and this clamp is to hold the Erlenmeyer when I'm ready to be heating it in the boiling water bath. This clamp over here is holding a filter flask because a little bit later I'm going to have to do a vacuum filtration. So we can use one retort stand to set up both of these. So we have our 125 ml Erlenmeyer with the 3.1 grams of the salicylic acid. I now want to add the acetic anhydride. I need to add 6 milliliters. So I'm going to use this 10 mil graduated cylinder and get myself 6 mils. Now understand that the acetic anhydride is in excess. So I'm going to aim for 6 mils. If I end up with 5.9 mils or 6.1 mils, it's not a big deal. And I can see that actually I'm very close to the 6 mils. So I'm going to add this now to my salicylic acid. At this stage, what we're going to end up with is a slurry. So it's not that the salicylic acid dissolves in the acetic anhydride, but you can see it kind of looks like a milky white slurry. Now I add the catalyst, the sulfuric acid. This is concentrated sulfuric acid. If you get any on your skin, immediately go over the sink and be flushing with water. But of course, if you handle this very carefully, there should be no reason to get it on your skin. So I have here a pasture pipette from which I will collect the 5 drops. Right, so you can see what I'm going to do is lift the lid this way. I don't want to really put down this lid anywhere, so I'm holding it between my fingers. I'm going to reach in and suck up some of the concentrated sulfuric acid. Now it's a very viscous liquid, so you won't get very much when you suck up, but you don't need very much, just 5 drops. So I'm going to count here. 1, 2, 5 drops. I will pour the rest back into the original container and of course close the lid. Please do not leave the sulfuric acid lid anywhere around here. It's very corrosive. It will corrode the paper here. You don't want anyone touching it. Okay, so please use that sort of technique. Now I'm going to swirl, and you'll see that I still have a milky consistency, but the color has changed a little bit. Now I've done this experiment a number of times. Sometimes at this stage I actually see even a pinkish color. Right now it's kind of yellowish. So what you see exactly will depend on your particular experiment, but it'll range somewhere between a slight yellow to a little bit of a pinkish color. So now let's go back to the bench where we have our hot water bath ready to progress with the rest of this reaction. Here we have our Erlenmeyer where we have already added our catalyst, sulfuric acid, and the acetic anhydride. Some of the slurry has disappeared, which kind of implies that the reaction has begun. I have my hot water bath. It is boiling, but gently, so this is going to avoid any boil over. Now I want to clamp my Erlenmeyer first of all before I lower it into the hot water bath. And now using the clamps connected to the retort stand, I'll lower my Erlenmeyer into the bath. The idea here is we want to be heating now for 15 minutes, so I've taken note of the time. I'll record that in my lab book. The white slurry has essentially disappeared, and I'm going to take a stir rod, a clean stir rod, and actually just kind of mix what used to be the white slurry all around. This reaction has been going now for 15 minutes, and so we're ready to terminate the reaction. One of the things that I really strongly encourage you to do is now turn off the hot plate so that you don't risk burning yourself later on. And the easiest thing to separate the Erlenmeyer from the boiling water bath is just to lift the clamp here on the retort stand. The bottom part of the Erlenmeyer here is definitely hot, but the top part isn't. So I can hold on to that quite easily. I'm going to separate the Erlenmeyer from the clamp, and I'm ready to now add my ice cold 25 mils of water. So I took this directly from my water bottle. It's ready to be added, and I'm going to do this directly. I want to be adding it while the solution is still hot and the water is cold. I'm going to be adding in about 2 or 3 mil increments. And when you first add, be careful. You will see a little bit of boiling there. So watch it. Don't be sticking your head right at the corner of the Erlenmeyer. Swirl with each addition, and actually be fairly quick on this. So I'm adding 2 to 3 mils at a time of ice cold water. Remember, the idea here is we want to terminate the reaction by using up the acetic anhydride, and also the fact that the aspirin is not very soluble in water, and so hopefully this will induce the crystallization of our aspirin. As you add the cold water, you'll see a little bit of cloud formation inside the flask, but as you swirl, usually the cloud will disappear. So the cold water has now been added, and I'm going to do a little check before I put this into the ice water bath. This is definitely easy to be touched now with your bare hands in all parts of the Erlenmeyer. And I'm just checking to see if any crystals have started to form. And indeed, I can start to see some small crystals, which I think is actually very satisfying because I know that I'm now going to be able to get the aspirin to crystallize out. So the next stage is to put this into the ice water bath. My crystals have been sitting in the ice water bath now for 10 minutes. I don't think there's going to be any further crystallization. I'm ready to do the vacuum filtration. Before I do the filtration, however, I noticed that there are some fairly large clumps, and so to have easier transfer of my aspirin solid, I'm just going to break the clumps up a little bit. So I'm going to wet the filter paper and get a good vacuum seal. Ready to transfer the slurry. I'm going to transfer fairly aggressively. So you want to get, of course, as much solid over as possible. Of course, there are some crystals remaining in the Erlenmeyer. So I'm going to squirt in, and I'm guesstimating that I'm squirting in here maybe on the order of about 10 mils, 5 to 10 mils. Just a couple of small washes. Now, while aspirin is not very soluble in water, and especially cold water, you don't want to use an infinite amount of water during these washes, because of course you will lose some of your aspirin, as a little bit will dissolve.